Okay. Hello. You can hear me. You can see me. You know. You know what's going on. How are you? How's everyone feeling? How's everyone thinking? How's everyone doing? I hope well. I'm doing great, but I have things I'm in the mood to rant about. Can I get ranty on you guys for a second? Because I want to. I really do. I have. These are very off topic, not cohesive rants that have just been bugging me today for some reason, and I want to get them off my chest. I know a lot of people are probably going to want me to go ahead and start talking about the Trolloc clip that dropped. I've watched it. I don't have a ton more to add to it. I like the way the Trolloc looks in the background. It's basically just a zoomed out video of what we already got on Moraine, and I thought it was cool. I'm not going to make a whole video on it because it is a lot of what we already saw. There is a Trolloc in the background. I'll cover it in fantasy news probably in this upcoming week. I'm not going to do a full dedicated video. My rant today is going to be not fantasy related at first, because my first rant is about another passion of mine I have not really shared with you guys, but it's a big deal to me. And I want to get this off my chest because it's becoming more and more of like almost a like fetish for certain streaming services, and it's not okay in my opinion. So I'm just gonna go off, all right? And I know that there's a whole Trolloc thing, and I will talk about it, but just not yet. I will do that in fantasy news because there's more context around that needs to be dove into. And so this is specifically about true crime. For those of you who don't know, I'm actually a huge true crime fan. I've just never been able to fit it into my channel because, you know, I'm a fantasy nerd first and foremost, so my true crime passion doesn't really blend with that. But I think it's come through occasionally for, like, you know, Stephen King stuff, my own writing. Like, I really love true crime. And I've studied it, not studied, but I've like read books like Helter Skelter. I've read like case files since I was like too young. I actually remember, I have a very clear memory of being on a plane reading Helter Skelter next to my mom and someone looking over and being like, isn't he a little young? And my mom just being like, it's his thing. I can't stop him. Because I was like 13 reading Helter Skelter, the book. And I just like couldn't stop because it was just, I don't know, I loved it. But now there's a very big rise in true crime, like just documentaries coming out on streaming services, like Netflix especially. Netflix is the biggest contributor I'm about to talk about. A lot of true crime documentaries are coming out on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it's probably because you're not in the, you know, Netflix has different formulas they use for different people. The algorithm says like, oh, this person likes true crime, let's show them a bunch. And I've been watching a bunch of these Netflix things, all the way back from Making a Murder. And they do a very bad job. I was bothered by Making a Murder because they left out a lot of the other side. But there was still a decent amount of like things they brought up that were good points that I genuinely was like, whatever. Like there is more of a, this guy's probably guilty that they're not getting into, but it's fine. I'll just let it go. Then I watched the recent Night Stalker thing, and it was almost offensive in how it was stylized. And I'm not easily offended, but when you're talking about real murderers, you're talking about actual victims who died at their hands. I think there should be a level of taste and tact in how you present this information, and having it be like this over the top, look how edgy we are, dun 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 music comes across wrong. I agree it should be presented darkly because it's a dark subject matter. It's dark, so you should have like eerie music. That's fine. I have no problem with that. For me, it's like oh, look how cool this killer was. Look at these headlines and like montages of people. That's wrong to me. Because then you're almost making the killer seem cool in real life, when in reality, serial killers are pathetic, sad losers. And it's like this media problem's been going on for ages. And I'm just sad to see streaming services now contributing to it, because you'd think we'd get better than it by now. And Netflix has another big, great example of how this is a problem with their recent Ted Bundy picture. Or was that Netflix? I don't know if it came out originally on Netflix, but that recent Ted Bundy movie, which made him like this cool, sexy, suave guy, when that's not what Ted Bundy was. It's a rumor, it's a misconception, but in reality, he was just attractive enough to pick up women at bars. And that's it. But even then, a lot of times he was trapping people. He wasn't picking them up. That's just a misconception about him as a killer. He's not some like super, because I've seen it presented where it's like Ted Bundy was some super genius who could get anyone to come back with. No, you just don't hear about the people who turned him down. The fact that you got Zac Efron, I think it was, to play him, no. Ted Bundy was a sad, pathetic loser who was attractive enough to occasionally pick people up, and that's it. And same thing with their most recent one that bothered me the most, Son of Sam. This bothers me so much about their Son of Sam thing, because they're presenting it as it was probably more than Son of Sam. And look at these like occasional slight things the police did that were wrong in the investigation. That discredits the entire investigation, and therefore it could have been a part of this giant satanic cult. When they don't get into how largely that's been discredited. Son of Sam was Son of Sam, and we know for sure there was not some giant satanic cult thing around him. That was just a result of it happening during the satanic panic, and Son of Sam played into that. He was a lone loser who worked on his own. Serial killers are pathetic losers. That's absolutely a thing. My friend's mother turned down a date with Ted Bundy. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of people out there who turned him down. And this, it's like, it happens with BTK. It happens with the Night Stalker. It happens with Zodiac. I'm fascinated by serial killers, but you have to realize there's not one serial killer in history who was actually cool. They were all fucking losers. Every single one of them. They were either extremely mentally damaged, which no, all of them were, which I'm not saying people who are mentally damaged are losers, but they were mentally damaged, dysfunctional people. And having our media continuously present them as these cool, awesome things is absolutely fucking disgusting, and it bothers me a lot. Because it's something Hollywood and now streaming services apparently have latched onto and are trying to profit from. And I don't think they're necessary. I don't want to like over dramatize it and be like, they're going to be responsible for copycats or something like that. I don't believe in subscribing blame like that. But the combination of making serial killers look cool and then also presenting misinformation or presenting debunked crap as fact throughout these documentaries and stuff is extremely irresponsible and distasteful, in my opinion. So that's just a weird side rant I have, and it drives me nuts. We need to stop giving them names like the Night Stalker, because, okay, yes, they're stalking at night, but they're also like sad, pathetic loser Richard Ramirez, who had no friends and was just an idiot who got caught basically doing something dumb. Like Criminal Minds is very guilty of that. Yeah, true. Almost every cop show, besides from glorifying police in ways that are unrealistic, also does this, where they'll like have the intense interview with the serial killer where it's like, oh, they're a genius. They're so smart. It's not that hard to be a serial killer in the 80s and get away with it for a while. It's pretty damn easy. They didn't have proper blood tests going on. You could sneeze on the floor and leave like your DNA and they'd be like, we don't know. Because it wasn't very hard to be a killer back then. It's hard as hell to be if they're a serial killer who's successful now, maybe they're a bit smart. But the presenting serial killers as like these geniuses who are outsmarting the police. It's not about intelligence. It's luck. 99.999% of the time, the reason they get away with it for so long is because of luck. And then they get unlucky and then they're caught. It drives me nuts because there are real victims who still have to deal with the psychological trauma of having been around these people, who then have to see these same people portrayed in media as if they were awesome. That's not cool. That's really wrong. That's really messed up. I get that it sells, but it's inaccurate, it's distasteful, it's disrespectful, and you're not even bothering to mention the victim names half the time. You can name Charles Manson, but the people who actually know the name Sharon Tate is less. That's sad. That should not be the case. Sorry. Okay. Rant Live didn't tell me as much, but joining in the middle, I'm pretty sure this has to be about No. This is not about my own novella. This is about true crime presentation. What are your thoughts on Dexter, the show? Dexter is good. A good show, but it has a lot of the same issues. I like Dexter, but this is an exception. I think Dexter is such clearly fake fiction, but like it doesn't fall into this as much. But there are people who are dumb enough to think it's like an accurate representation of serial killers. Hey, my dad. Yeah, some of my friends thought your serial killer thing was a bit more than odd, but then I look at your for a dive through Hollywood Hills. Yeah. My dad knows for sure I've been into serial killers since I was young. But it's did they watch I did not watch the Jeffrey Epstein one. My stomach growls, my heart whimpers. They have a pretty solid Wattpad's Dom sub. I'm very confused by what that means. So okay, this just it drives me nuts. And I like want to do a whole video series on this. I just want to do a whole video series on like how we've fetishized and fantasized people like Jeffrey Dahmer, who was so alone and desperate and broken as a human that he wanted to make people into sex zombies. And yet we're like, he's so bad at. No, he just took advantage of those that are vulnerable. And that's the biggest thing people have to remember when talking about serial killers. All they do is take advantage of the vulnerable. That's it. They're not cool. They're not badass. They're sad. And they're predators. And they're pathetic. And that's just a weird thing that I'm passionate about. I think Mindhunter handled the trails. Yeah, I think they actually are one of the few shows that did. Because often the serial killers in that show try to be like suave and like, oh, I'm smarter, but then like the detectives who are actually experienced like break them down and analytically get into them quite well. And there are serial killers who are intimidating. I'm not going to take that away from them. Of course they are. They've proven they can kill people. That's scary. I would say, I would agree. A serial killer can be intimidating. I'm fine with that. BTK was a big dude and probably scary. But this sick idea that serial killers are masterminds, they are to be emulated, they are smarter, is inaccurate. It's disservice, and it's extremely distasteful. And there was one documentary I saw on John Benet Ramsey that really made me sad, and how it spent so much time getting into the graphic details around the death, spinning out theories that have no solid evidence, but never talked about how sad it was what happened to the child. This wasn't a priority. It was the graphic, gruesome details. And then they just move on. A child died. A child was murdered and went through a lifelong abuse for all their life that we know of. And that wasn't focused on, because that won't sell. I don't know. Do you see the Sharon Tate and Nicole Brown Simpson movies where the director tried to imply their murderers were... Yeah, I did. And that's absolutely disgusting. I didn't watch them. I just saw it as a thing. Why do I think they're so popular? That's a good question. I think it's because a lot of people view it as just entertainment. They view it the same way as they would the show Dexter, which isn't based in reality. I think the problem is people need to start reframing how they think about this. It's reality. It's real. This isn't fantasy. You're talking about actual murderers, real victims who are still alive, or descendants of victims who are still alive, who have to see these documentaries where the killers are talked about like they're these badasses. Could you imagine, like, put yourself in the shoes, your sister, your aunt, your mom is killed by someone horrifically, and the details of that are put out again and again and again and again for people to just fantasize over. And here's the thing. I love true crime. The people that do it well, I really like. And I actually even think you can have like a true crime podcast where you crack some jokes as long as you're respectful to the victims and your jokes aren't at anyone's expense, right? You're just someone who's passionate about true crime and you present it well. It's the people who never give a thought to the victim. They don't name the victims, and they forget that the media presentation of the serial killer is wrong very often. Here we go. There are also plenty of people writing fanfic on serial killers. That is disgusting. Tumblr is a huge fan base surrounding them. It's super weird. The movies definitely feed into that. I hate that. That is so gross. The same thing happens with portrayals of other crimes, such as the mafia. They glamorize that story just to help distract. Yeah, exactly. Like the mafia is a great example, or prohibition. Like prohibition, people are like, oh, it was like the anti-government, like we got alcohol. And yeah, like I think the government overstepped and it was wrong to ban alcohol. But during prohibition, horrible things were done to people all the time. And these mobsters who were doing it were sick people who were taking advantage of business owners, who were taking advantage of neighborhoods that weren't properly protected. And they just murdered, broke legs, dropped off bombs. Like there were people killed in bombings during prohibition over this. Who has done true crime well presented accurately? So that's a really good question, Charles. I really like that you asked that. it's difficult. I think I'm not going to sit here and say you can't like your favorite podcast that goes into this, because there's definitely some podcasters I listen to that definitely ride the line who, may get into some people are disrespectful. I know there's a big following for True Crime Garage, or there's just two dudes talking it out, and their tone is very nonchalant. And I think some people could really have a problem with that. But I think I always heard them refer to the killers as like these sick, sad creeps. And that does a lot for me already, because they're not buying into the Ted Bundy's this badass, when they will break it down and be like, no, he's a loser. And I think a lot of, and so I've seen a lot of Twitch streamers who get into true crime stuff, which I know is a thing, and do a really good job of really breaking it down. But I think my favorite murder, I have mixed feelings on. I think they aren't bad in any way. I think they do a good job of really, especially when, again, talking about the killers, not making them into these like heroes. They just crack jokes to a point where occasionally it can bother me, because again, you're talking about real life people. The ones that have no humor at all, and basically just listen to how they talk about the killer. That's the biggest indication for me. If they are not buying into they're this super genius, like mystic monster above it all, they're probably good. Just because you can so clearly hear that. There's one called Sword and Scale that I had to stop listening to, because the guy just spent way too much time talking about how brutal things were, when honestly, in reality, when you're talking about true crime, the actual details of the horrific murder, not super important. I think it's important to know them, but it's not necessarily important to spend 20 minutes of an hour-long episode talking about them. So I don't know. That's something right there. Why are you so into true crime? Same, but I can't always put my finger on why I'm so intrigued, because it's something that I think breaks society and breaks social norms in such a visceral way that it's interesting to see something that is so outside of the day-to-day. I think that's a very big part of it. Media attention on serial killers also inspires copycat, and a lot of begins with making them to pseudo celebrities. I agree and disagree. I think it's a slippery slope to say that, because if someone's going to be a copycat, I think they're going to be a copycat. I think if people are mentally deranged enough to go out and kill someone, they're going to do it. It's like blaming video games. I don't agree with that, because it's like there's an underlying mental health issue that is much higher up than just people glorifying killers. I think it's a part of the problem, but I don't want to write it off as these people should be banned. I, of course, don't think any of this should be banned. I don't think any of the Netflix documentaries should be removed. I'm a totally free media, free whatever you want to create. But because I believe in that, I believe in my freedom to criticize it. And I'm criticizing the hell out of it because it's sick, in my opinion. So I think what we really need to focus on is the mental health angle to true crime, which is often forgot about, which I find extremely ironic, because a lot of these people who are a part of like the true crime circles will do lip service to how mental health is so important, or such a contributing factor to a lot of these, but they won't spend the amount of time in their episodes getting into it, because I don't think it's as quote unquote sexy as talking about the graphic details of the murder, or, how many victims there were, or not, the same reason they don't name the victims, but they'll just hit, and move on. It bothers me. Opposite happens with pirates. Many pirates freed slaves and democratic systems on their ship, etc. Media really portrays, well, pirates were also not awesome people. Let's just get that out of the way. Like, yes, the pirates did some good stuff. Like, it's never so totally black and white. But I think it's a little dangerous to say like pirates were great. Hey Goblin, how you doing? Hello from Brazil. Hello back, Alexander. I'm doing okay. I'm in a mad mood. Totally agree. And it's creepy to see prohibition glamorized. Mobsters are terrible people. People shouldn't glamorize it. Agreed. It's really gross in some ways. Hey, would you want a related fantasy book? Sure. Go right ahead. I feel like a lot of this serial killer is a genius is perpetuated by law enforcement to excuse police incompetence. That might be a pretty good factor. I think it is easy for cops to want to lean into this because it lets them get off. When in reality, it's really hard back in the 80s to catch a killer. But the reason you don't see as many serial killers now, one, mental health stuff's better. But two, it's much harder to become a serial killer now because you get caught. But forensic science has made the act of being a serial killer way harder because basically if you've been in a room and you're not wearing all kinds of like I can't drop a hair, they can prove you were there. So that's part of it. Before writing Breach of Peace, did you have a lot of writing experience? No, zero. That was my first real writing experience. Just finished Fistborn book. Good. I'm glad. And I agree, it's genius. Speaking of mafia and crime, do you think The Sopranos successfully de-glamorized the mob in contrast to older mafia fiction like The Godfather? Yes, because the biggest thing is you make them humans. Here's an interesting thing about storytelling. This is actually fascinating when it comes to storytelling and true crime and things like this. The best examples of crime shows or true crime that actually present these people well are the ones that do the best character work, because the best character work is realistic. And so something like Breaking Bad, I'll never understand how people say Breaking Bad like glamorized meth or being a drug manufacturer. Did you watch the show? Because it did a really realistic job of crafting these characters, and it made them into monsters, pathetic, sad, bad people. Walter White's a piece of crap, and he's an idiot. He's smart, but he's an idiot. And that's part of why it works so well. And that's why it's actually a good representation, in my opinion, of the drug life, because it made the drug people into monsters or idiots or poor circumstances or users or predators. And that's what they are. And that's what Walter White was. And if you watch that show and you walk away thinking Walter White's a badass, your comprehension skills are pathetic. And I don't mean that to be as insulting as it sounds, but how did you walk away with, okay, mild spoilers for Breaking Bad. How did you watch the scene where one of the characters closest to him was breaking down crying, how Walter White must be stopped and he's such a horrible person, and think, oh, Walter ruined that guy's life. He's so cool. Love him. No. The shows that do a good job representing true crime are the ones, or crime in general, are the ones that actually like do good character work. It's fascinating. Explore with Us does pretty good true crime videos. I haven't seen that. With the Night Stalker, really got into the backstory and how he had no chance as a kid. That's also something that needs to be talked about more heavily. And it's funny, a lot of the YouTubers and Twitch streamers who get into this stuff do a better job of really balancing it out. Not all of them, but a lot of them, than like the Netflix documentaries that present these one-sided debunked arguments. The Son of Sam was part of this giant satanic cult. No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. We know that's not true. Sorry. Dark Fantasy. You like, I Am Not a Serial Killer by Dan Wells. Ooh, sociopathic teenager who really didn't want to be a serial killer uses those instincts to hunt monsters. Author Def did his research. I like that. That's going to be high on my I need to watch now. What are your thoughts on using genetic genealogy to solve cold cases to identify bodies? I honestly, I'm going to hold one of these things and say, I don't see why it wouldn't be a thing, but I haven't researched this enough to see if there's people out there who are saying it shouldn't be. So I'm not going to speak on the matter, which is something people in true crime need to learn to do more as well, to say, hey, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't weigh in on this. Because that's something that I think is a big problem as well, where you see these experts who come in and they ask them a question unrelated to their field. They give a confident answer, and it's like, whoa, you just answered a forensics question. And it says you're a journalist. Shut the fuck up. Sorry, that's just another thing that bothers me. Do you think the type of glamorization has moved into something new? Yes. Yes. I think genuinely this type of glamorization is getting worse. I think the recent Ted Bundy movie is a great example of this. And I think, so you want to look at the progression of how it's getting worse. Look at, there's other issues with this movie. Look at Psycho, which presents Norman Bates as pathetic. I think it presents Norman Bates as a sad person. It does make him a threat, but it doesn't make him anything best. And that's not true crime. But then look at an actual true crime movie, Zodiac, which I think did a good job of making Zodiac not awesome, but it also kind of built this mystique around him as a killer, but that's because it was unsolved, so I can understand that. There's problems there, but it's excusable. Then look at the recent Ted Bundy movie, which basically just took all the myths around him as a person, which aren't true, and amped them up to make something that sold better. I think that's a progression of it getting worse. And it's not always like that. This is a general trend. But I can see, especially these streaming services who are, Netflix does all kinds of weird stuff and people just forget about it and move on. Like they did that thing around children and dancing that a lot of people were like, what the hell? No one's talking about that anymore because these streaming services have their release of the month and everyone forgets about it. Even Tiger King had problems in its presentation where they left out stuff about that guy being a horrible racist, because it wouldn't have made it such a wholesome watch. And I don't, okay, wholesome was the wrong word, but it would have made it so problematic that a lot of the entertainment value couldn't have been kept in. And it's just, they need, if you're going to do this real world truthful stuff, you need to tell the whole story. Sorry, that's my opinion on the matter. This reminds me of Lindsay Ellis's video on the roots of transphobia, where a lot of assumptions come from really good pieces of media, but when you look further into it, that isn't true. Yeah, a lot of the stuff around serial killers is misconceptions that are inflated through like online rumor and speculation, and then they just move on, and that's it. Seven, I think, is a movie that portrays the serial killer well, where the serial killer, he gets, spoiler alert for a very old movie, he gets his way, but there in no way is there anything about that guy who's cool. He's just weird, creepy, wrong. And like, I guess you could say there's some stuff in framing around him that's not good, but I think the absolute depravity of what he does and the absolute not glamorization of what he does, it's dirty. The place he lives is a rat hole, is pretty nice. It's better. Have you seen Seven Thoughts? It's my favorite thriller, I'd say. I think so much glamorization happens because these new true crime movies are more inspired thrillers, than documentaries. I actually agree with that. I think those movies are pulling more heavily from, these thrillers than they are from the real life. And this is one area where I don't think it's okay to start with what's true and then exaggerate. I think you need to stick with what's true because you're, again, talking about people whose victims might still be alive or their descendants might still be alive. The truth is really important. There are most deaf people who idolize brutality and mercy. That's a whole other problem. That's a whole other issue in society. But okay, next, I have a whole other rant here. But I just wanted to get that off my chest. As someone who used to buy into this and used to watch these things and be like, oh, that's so cool. But then actually was woken up by realizing Making a Murder was a very one-sided part of that argument. And then Netflix has just kind of gotten worse from there. And seeing these podcasters who do a bad job or YouTubers or Twitch streamers, it's something I just want to yell into the void of the internet. Stop. Think about what you're doing, especially if these people, it's less than a 5-year-old crime. It's, What Breaking Bad and the Poppy War have in common: present the glamorization view on their topics and undercut it with horrific consequences. That's a really good point. Talk about two strange pieces of fiction to compare. I would say Poppy War does an even better job in some ways than Breaking Bad. I think Breaking Bad is guilty of, in certain episodes, glamorizing in some ways without undercutting enough. Well, I would say overall they undercut enough. But Poppy War is unrelenting in how the author just presents, power is achieved, but the cost is your soul. It's so good at that. Thoughts on how Tarantino handled the Manson family and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's such a conflicting thing. I really like Tarantino films. I think in terms of being a stylized director, you're kind of just you're lying if you're saying he's not interesting to watch as a director. But big problems in how he presented that. But you can't excuse it by showing he goes such in the direction of a fantasy version of what's happening. It's so not true events. It's in the Inglourious Bastards vein. He's not trying to present it as reality at all. So I can give him a lot more leash there. Whereas something like this Ted Bundy movie was in the guise of this is true. And that bothers me a lot more. So I think people who have problem with the way Tarantino presented the Manson family, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I personally give him more leash because in no way was Tarantino saying this is the truth. So it's slightly different scenario, but I get the complaints absolutely. And I think I think it also comes down to comprehension skills. And people might think this is controversial to say, but there are people who can't comprehend that Walter White is sad and pathetic and loses it all. And he's a selfish, garbage individual. The show presents him as that, and people can't comprehend it. And you got to do better. You need to pay attention to the themes, the emotions. Minor spoiler warning for Breaking Bad. There's a scene where there's a knife involved with a confrontation with his family, and Walter realizes just how much He's turned and used and abused everyone against him, and he's left with no option but to steal his daughter and flee. He kidnaps his own kid because that's how horrible it's gotten for him. And I've seen people who post like the badass Walter White quote, and they're like, "Be the lion, not the sheep," as if he's somehow a role model. Are you high? Nothing in the show of Breaking Bad, not a moment, presents Walter White as a role model. It's the same people look up to Jordan Belfort after watching Wolf of Wall Street and don't realize that that entire movie is this gigantic critique of capitalism and everything that man did, because there's like a flashy overlay. People's comprehension is so poor they can't get over a flashy overlay because it has to be entertaining. And so that's an example of why these documentaries that are like presenting themselves as the truth of Ted Bundy have a responsibility to not even have that. Because if you're going to present this stuff in this glamorized way, when there's so many people out there who can't even separate what you're doing from fact, it's a big problem. And I'm generally not for having to placate the lowest common denominator. But again, you're dealing with real people, real victims, and having it so that like you buy into the myth that Ted Bundy could manipulate whoever he wanted. He's a super genius when he was a sad, pathetic loser in real life who was just occasionally able to pick up women. You're doing damage. And there are victims and descendants of victims who have to wake up and see you do that. And I'm sure get texts and messages and stuff. And it's not cool. Whatever. I'm whining at this point. Archaeologists and other professionals can't release information for decades sometimes if the information is genetically, yeah. And there's not that same level of protection for victims out there. I saw an interview not too long ago with the survivor of a serial killer. I can't remember which one. And they were talking about how like every day they get threats from people who are fans of the serial killer. They get threats from fans of serial killers because the people will be like, you deserved it. And it's because those people think the serial killer's like a rock star, because that's what the media does. It makes these people into rock stars, when in reality, most of the time, they're just mentally broken people who the system failed. That's it. But they get treated like this glamorized thing. And it's not okay. It really bugs me. Sorry. My best friend of 15 years wants to start his fantasy/sci-fi podcast with me, but I'm nervous about seeming pretentious or being judged for an amateur casual takes. Do you have any advice? When I started this entire channel devoted to fantasy, I had read like 3 fantasy series. If I can do it with that, you can absolutely go right ahead, because it's not about starting out like a professional. It's about starting out as an amateur and getting better. And you'll gain your most dedicated fans, the people who love watching you grow better. So absolutely do that. Just be willing to admit when you make a mistake. You can tell who doesn't get the point of Breaking Bad by who still thinks Skyler is the villain. I cannot stand the Skyler hate. Skyler is gaslit and mentally just broken by her husband. And people are like, she's the villain. Are you kidding me? All right, whatever. Those are people who don't even understand what gaslighting is. Just like Rick from Rick and Morty. Rick is not the hero, and all his views on life are not to be taken as gospel. Yeah, he's just a nihilist. The writer and creator of Rick himself has said Rick's not deep. Like, he's just a nihilist and a drug. But there are people who, because you have that skinning of like, oh, I'm badass and smart, they can't realize like Rick ruins the lives of the people he's in. It's kind of the same way people view the Joker. Yeah, there's the Joker as a character can vary in quality, like most things in fiction, in comic books, depending on who's writing him. Like, there's so many people who write the Joker. It just entirely depends what writers got their hands on him. The Joker can be done well, or it can be done terribly. Yeah. About Breaking Bad, it's weird. A lot of fans had such scorn and hate towards Skyler, even though she becomes a victim. Yeah, she's not at the end. I don't want to critique you, but not at the end. Since the early seasons, she is being gaslit. And it's so important to realize as a viewing audience, for anyone who's like done their research, being gaslit in that way is horrible and so draining. Having someone continually feed you small lies and guilt you, the way Walter is doing from season 1, makes you a victim, and it's so hard to function and know what's true. The reason she comes across as like over the, harsh is because her reality is being broken, where someone she's supposed to be able to trust is feeding her lies and guilting her. That makes you absolutely a victim. Gaslighting is a terrible, terrible thing. And the people who go like, she's so annoying, you be in that situation. Imagine if the person you love most, you find out has been lying to you about everything and is telling you it's your fault and is telling you they're doing it for you. Yeah, you're probably not going to you're not going to handle that very well. Sorry. Recommend for good true crime podcast. It's really going to depend on your own taste. A lot of people love Serial. A lot of people like True Crime Garage. A lot of people like My Favorite Murder. It's going to depend on what you particularly like. I would just do a one episode for like the same topic for a bunch of different ones. Just go through and like go through true crime and do that and pick from there. Let's see. I'm glad people don't hate Debbie from Invincible like they hate Skylar. I liked Debbie from Invincible quite a bit. Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. What's your complaints so far with One Piece? I really don't have any. One Piece is so much fun. Pulp detectives, that's a good way to put it. Gaslighting is a crude form of brainwashing. It absolutely is, especially to the degree in which like Walter White is doing it. You're essentially, so gaslighting to that extent is absolutely a horrible way to manipulate somebody. And you are abusing them. It's abuse. Gaslighting to that extent, or really any extent, is abuse. It is. And a lot of the people who, it's funny, if you find people who will like defend gaslighting, often they are being gaslit in their life. It's such a strange thing. Anyway, have you read Scott Pilgrim vs. World? I'm recommending that. A lot of people think you completely missed the point that Scott aren't realizing that he sucks. I actually watched that movie a long time ago and just didn't like it, but maybe I need to give it another rewatch. Alan Moore refuses to take money for any of his film adaptation, gives money he would earn to artists because they glorify violence / miss the point. I didn't know that. If that's true, that's awesome. I have a question about the QC of your book. I ordered a copy from Barnes & Noble, and I read it. One of the first pages fell out. Oh, man. I put a Twitter a month ago, but I never got a response. Sorry, I didn't see that. You have to contact Barnes & Noble directly. I unfortunately cannot control or affect distribution, so that would be a Barnes & Noble issue, and they should be able to resolve it for you. I'm sorry, Lifted Starfish. The quality I've heard overall has been very, very good, but when you're printing tens of thousands of copies, stuff's going to go down. So I'm sorry you had to deal with that. But yeah, unfortunately, I cannot control distribution at all. I wish I could, but I cannot. It reminds me of the pop culture around Jack the Ripper. People forget about the victims. Yeah, and they forget, like, there's all this stuff where it's like, to make this cut, he had to be an educated surgeon. When you look into the people who like actually know what they're talking about, they're like, no, he could have just read in a book one thing and done that. And the fact that you dissect people doesn't make you some smart, brilliant surgeon. He could have been there's some evidence for he's an educated guy. There's some he wasn't. But like, especially true crime that's that old, anyone who's presenting that they know what they're talking about as fact, totally talking out their ass. You can't solve a crime from that many centuries ago unless you get some amazing forensic breakthrough. That's a whole other conversation, but you're absolutely right. I don't if you watched, but Dexter has the same issue. Dude is a serial killer, lies to everyone, but people love him. That's because that's actually one of the big issues. People talk about a lot of the problems of the ending of that show, and I think there are a lot of big problems with the ending of that show that people are right about. But another is they never got into the absolute depths of how much his lying hurt people, and it didn't pay off in a way that reflected. Instead of, spoiler kind of for the ending of Dexter, it just kind of resulted in people die, move on, and Dexter away free. And it didn't feel like it actually paid for the themes that were set up. Instead, it felt rushed. So that's a conversation around theming that really matters. I'm a little late to the party, but finally finished Breach of Peace. It's incredible and can't wait for more. Thank you so much, Kat. I appreciate that. Brent, the Walter take reminds me of Sons of Anarchy in a scene where Jax had to explicitly describe himself as the awful person in the final episode. Isn't it sad that like a writer was probably like, our audience isn't going to get it, so let's really make this hit home. Like, it's people's lack of comprehension for character. It's sad. It's really sad. It's bad. Take on pants, jeans, joggers, cargo shorts. You're wrong on all accounts. Sweatpants. I wear sweatpants for days, son. Sorry. Assassin's Creed Syndicate had a DSL where the protagonist knew Jack the Ripper as a former assassin that went crazy, and it was just gross and bad. That does not sound like it would do well. Yeah. Okay. So I get that there are people who are going to say, well, that murder case is old enough where you're not offending or hurting anybody by doing whatever you want with it. So I can accept that for a case that old, blended into fiction or whatever, and that's fine. I can get that. It's the stuff that like happened within the last 50 years where it's like, it just feels wrong to me because there are people who were directly affected, probably still having to deal with real ramifications of like the psychological trauma, who will see what you're talking about. Because trust me, it'll be sent to them or something. And I'm not even getting into the fact that, yes, real life serial killers have groupies. And that is so messed up. And those people will defend the killer, attack the victims after the fact, which is something that isn't talked about hardly at all. But in real life, victims who survive serial killers or people close to the victims often have to deal with serial killer groupies. And oh my God, just wow. Ah, that's horrifying. For new sweatpants, don't wear them for days. Change your pants. I don't wear them for days. I meant, you know what I mean? I wear different pairs of sweatpants day after day. That's funny. How much do you think the artist / creator responsibility to take account the public's comprehension skills? That's a good question. Not much. I think it is. I don't blame people. I don't blame the writer behind Breaking Bad. What's his name? Aaron Sorkin. I know his name. He's a great writer. I don't blame him for people failing to comprehend Walter White because he did his job. Every bit you need as a viewer is there to show how not someone to emulate Walter White is. Absolutely. I blame our education system for people watching Breaking Bad and being like, I want to make meth, let alone like, oh, it'll probably destroy everyone's life around you. Can do one more super chat. I'll spend it. Pips, please. Pips! I think he's asleep in the guest room. If he comes in, I'll let you know, I promise. Bro, did you buy that $900 Wheel of Time set? They gave it. Oh, they gave it to me. And it's not $900 if you just buy just buy the covers, which I think is the better option. Because if you're this dedicated to Wheel of Time, you probably already have the hardbacks. You can just buy the covers for much cheaper. Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate you. Have you read all the books in the Millennium series? Yeah, unfortunately, the first 3 books were absolutely outstanding crime books, and then the quality went sharply downhill from there. I love the first 3 books. That's probably my favorite trilogy, period. Those first 3 books by the one author before the other guy took over are maybe my favorite trilogy of all time. If Pips comes in here, yeah. Why do you think people say Attack on Titan is fascist propaganda? This is an interesting rant I also want to get into. I'll keep it spoiler-free as I can. I've had this brought to my attention, and I have not thoroughly read into the accounts on both sides because I selfishly don't want to spoil the series for me, and I've heard some people say it's a lot of stuff that the show hasn't quite tackled yet. So I can't speak so heavily on the matter. So far, my own interpretation has been fairly anti-war, fairly anti-nationalism, and fairly anti-fascist, because that show gets into the ramifications of violence heavily and gets into the ramifications of war a lot. And this like allegiance to your state, from my reading and viewing so far, has really been negative. But, and I want to admit my own knowledge is lacking here, the people who have finished it, and some of them whose opinions I really respect, have said the ending notes are very pro a lot of fascist themes. And so I have not gotten into that. I don't know exactly why. Please don't spoil it for me. I'll make my own judgment when I get there. But I'm not going to dismiss that because I can't speak on the matter yet. So for my own reading, to where I'm at in the story, it seems pretty anti that stuff. But, you know, a lot of fascist propaganda is pretty good at, you know, not looking like fascist propaganda. So I'll wait till I finish it and speak on the matter from there. I also do believe I need to judge it as the media it is, while ignoring the overall themes if I disagree with them. I mean, there's fantasy books I really disagree with some themes on that I've given glowing reviews to. And if I will note if I disagree with the messaging of Attack on Titan at the end, but I will not make that, like, I'm not going to give it a 0 out of 10 because I think it's like fascist or something. I need to, you know, there'll be an asterisk, but I still have to do a solid review, if that makes sense. Hi, Daniel. I'm Pedro. Hello, Pedro. I really like your channel, and because of you, I started Wheel of Time for that. Thanks, greetings from Brazil. Oh, and that is awesome. People who, okay, I can tell you're bilingual, and you're amazing. It's impressive. Thank you. And I'm so glad you started Wheel of Time. People who can speak multiple languages, I immediately assume you're smarter than me. Just right away, you are smarter than me. Just adopted a cat and renamed him Hopper. Love that. One of my favorite Wheel of Time characters who doesn't get enough love. The Hopper love is real. The Hopper love is absolutely real. And I think you just need to run, wait, sorry. Hold up. Sorry. I don't know if you're open to reading online, but Mother of Learning is a Finnish web serial and has been one of the best magic systems out there. Web serials I'll probably get into in the distant future. Do you ever deal with this when doing your own writing, like glorifying the Empire too much or something on that level? So this is something I'm having to try and be tactful about. In my writing, I'm trying to have a decent balance of you're in the perspective of people who are absolutely believing propaganda that they think they are serving the right, but I'm trying to put in enough notes, like moments, to show the truth. And book one was supposed to be like the most upper high tiers of the specific positions in society the characters live in. They are in the most prestigious precinct around, so they don't have to deal with a lot of the truths. Book two is going to come from one of the most in the grit, awful precincts. And so it's going to hopefully provide a juxtaposition of perspective to give that well-rounded view that I really want to hit on. So that's something I'm really trying to stretch for. Daniel, I finished Wheel of Time again. Oh, we got a rereader. I love it. And now I don't know what to read. Sanderson, I think Brent Weeks, Erickson, or Wheel of Time again. Let's see. Do you think the changing of history / unclear history in Attack on Titan might relate to the problem with Japan denying their own war crimes in World War II? Again, I have not gotten into the actual ending, so I cannot speak on that matter exactly, but I do know that is a huge problem in Japan from speaking to people who have lived in Japan or first generation Japanese coming here. I know that is a very real problem in the culture over there. So I can't speak on that matter, but I won't say it's not a thing that I've noticed or been told firsthand from people who have lived there. One thing that really bothers me as I've gotten older is noticing queer-coded villains in children's and adult films. Do you have any thoughts? As someone who has recently come out as being a member of the LGBTQ plus community, this is something that has bothered me my whole life. And I guess I still feel imposter syndrome saying this, but I can talk from the perspective of someone who it's supposed to represent. It's hurtful sometimes, especially when they're overtly homophobic presentations. But I also believe real equality in writing doesn't mean you have to have the LGBTQ plus character be a hero every time. They can be a villain. They can be bad. Equality in writing doesn't mean you make the Black character or the Latina character or whatever the good guy all the time. It means you make them always a well-realized, well-rounded person. And where they fall on the moral spectrum has nothing to do with the feature of them you're trying to represent. That's equality in writing. I'll never forget a conversation with my mom where she told me, I don't care if you make a lesbian character a villain or not. My mom's gay. And she just said, I just care that you make them a well-rounded, understood person with clear motivations. So there are examples from childhood cartoons that are offensive and I think are bad, but some of them are really well-rounded people and they're good characters. So I'm like, yeah, I don't mind that they're obviously coded that way. That's fine. As long as they are sympathetic, they are in some way, and they're not just over the top mustache twirling characters. Do you plan on reading the Invincible comics? I wasn't, but so many people have told me it's their favorite comic. So maybe, because damn, is it apparently good. And I love the show. Let's see. When will your second novella come out? Hopefully the very end of the year. I'm well on track for that. Well, I'm pretty much done with the writing, except for drafting. So it's going to depend on how quick my editors are, my artists are, and that's not to put pressure on them at all. They all have their own lives and schedules, but if there's going to be a delay, it might be there, and that's fine. I'm not demanding anything, but if it's not at the end of the year, it's probably because I'm being caught up in the more not creative side of the writing. Let's see. Would you read a true crime fantasy mashup story? Well, I'm writing those now. True crime. I'm writing a crime fantasy mashup, not true crime. If it's old enough crimes that I don't feel like it's being disrespectful to anyone who's alive, sure. If it's all the way back to Jack the Ripper, I don't think that would bother me. But if it's something that's like the DC Sniper, I grew up dealing with that, so I'd rather not. Because I grew up in the area where I remember seeing I've been to that grocery store that woman was shot at. So I don't really want to see a fantasy retelling. Do Do you think I should read most books in the original English, or do you think there's no difference from reading in my home language? Unfortunately, Mug, that's a great question. There's no consistently right answer. It depends on the quality of the translation and how well you can read the other language you're trying to read in. So it's going to have to be researched on an individual basis, which I know isn't the most fun answer, but it's an honest one. You gotta unfortunately just figure out, is this translation good enough for your standard, and figure out from there whether or not you want to read it. But yeah, but here's, okay, now there's going to be a fine line, because again, I think some people are going to take what I'm saying and say you can't draw inspiration from true crime. Absolutely you can. If you want to write a fantasy story that heavily takes inspiration from the Manson family, go ham. Just don't make it Charles Manson, and don't make the victim names the actual victim names. Change it enough that it's inspired by, and then you make that clear. Don't be one of these things where it's like, here's the real story of Charles Manson, and then you glorify, fantasize, Charles freaking Manson. He was, again, an exploiter, a predator who preyed on young girls and brainwashed them. He's not someone to be idolized. He's sad and pathetic. Have you ever reviewed No, I have not, but that is on my TBR. It's not very high, though. Let's see. Congrats on coming out, I think. Yeah, I'm bi. So that's something. Let's see. Translation is itself an act of writing, and it's an art form. That's something a lot of people don't know about. Translating, it's not always about doing a literal translation. You have to find what captures the meaning, tone, and intent, and a literal translation might not often do that. So you have to have this like rewriting in a way. And so sometimes bad translations are the most accurate ones, because they didn't bother to actually try and recapture in like local terminology, capturing like the original art's intent. They just went literal. I've heard that's somewhat tied to some of the issues with the Witcher translations, though I could be misled there. I can't speak on that too well. I've just heard that. Is there a best place to buy your book from? Whatever's easiest for you. That's always what I'm going to say to that. I don't worry about compensating me. Just get whatever you can afford, what's convenient. That's all I care about. I think the audiobook's rather great because Michael Kramer and Kate Redding are phenomenal. But I don't like make the most money off that or anything. Let's see. Translation is literally much harder than writing the book itself. I don't know if that's true. Probably depends on the book. I would say, yeah, it's probably a case-by-case basis, but it's freaking hard. Thank you so much for the 5. Okay. All right. We've talked a lot about true crime for a lot longer than I meant to. I just went off for an hour about representation in true crime in a way that really means a lot to me. And I think is a responsibility that needs to be taken further in. Another thing I want to rant about, specifically to my audience. This is a long-stemming problem that has been around for a long time, and it's weird. And it's going to take 5 minutes for me to get through. It's weird for content creators, for people to comment like, oh, I think these two should be dating. I've had this happen with me and women, me and men, doesn't matter. It's odd. Because I want you to picture me showing up to your workplace, coming into your office as you're talking with one of your coworkers and being like, these two should bang. It'd be weird, wouldn't it? Be odd. Be really strange. We're not fictional characters to be shipped. We're people. I've had this happen with content creators who are married, and I'm very good friends with their spouses. I've had it happen with people who are not into men. I've had it happen across the board. It's strange. And I know it's going to happen forever. I can't make people stop. Please stop. It's weird. Just, we're human beings, and we're friends, and we're coworkers in a lot of ways. So we're not fictional characters. I'm very pro shipping fictional characters. That's fine. I ship some fictional characters. I'm not. I'm really not. I'm a real dude, and it's kind of weird to do that to somebody. Hey, Daniel, did you hear about the Heart of Jedi on Amazon and how it got taken down? No, I didn't. What the heck? What's going on there? I stand George Martin, but really want to read more fantasy. I have Way of Kings and the Blade itself, but I don't love Sanderson's prose. Oh, you would love Abercrombie's prose. I have never heard someone say they don't love Abercrombie's prose. So I'm willing to put money down that you will love his prose. That's a very safe bet. Very safe bet. That is a much more safe than Dogecoin safe bet. Let's see. You should read Monster. It's an excellent sample of thriller manga. I read the Alan Moore Jack the Ripper. Is that Monster? I don't remember. But Monster, I'll look into it after this is over. Daniel, you're real. I'm not a fictional person. Just got your audiobook and Audible. Looking forward to listening to it. Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. It's funny. People have commented like, you got to stop like saying you're constantly plugging your book. But then I get comments in every video that's like, you wrote a book. So it's like, yeah, I did. People seem to forget that YouTubers have a life outside YouTube. Yeah, and you don't know who's already in a relationship. Like, I'm not necessarily making my dating life public anymore. I've made that mistake before, and I like to keep it under wraps now. Yeah. Espria From Hell was what I was thinking of. Thank you. Thank you for the correction there. And I don't remember too much about From Hell because I read it a long time ago. So, yeah, that was just a mini rant. Daniel, this is such weird but pervasive thing. There are people that will harass IRL spouses of actors because they ship the actor with their on-screen character's partner. Yeah, it's weird. Getting into the people who are just unable to connect fiction from reality, like people who fantasize or fetishize serial killers. People do this for actors. You got to understand the parasocial relationship is real. And like, I'm not going to deny, like, okay, hold up. Sorry. I will second Norzaki Monster. Okay. I will look into Monster because that's something that sounds interesting. I ship Daniel Green and Green Daniel. That is a ship I can get behind. So I'm not one of these YouTubers who denies that, like, there are people who say, you don't know me. You do know me. I present a very genuine side of myself in my videos. My humor is me. The way I talk is me. But you see an extremely edited, specific side of me. And that's it. I think that's a very important thing to remember when you're getting into any kind of person you're following, right? Even like just a model on Instagram or an actor or a YouTuber, TikToker, doesn't matter. You're seeing a real side of them, depending on the person, but a filtered, edited side of them. That's it. In real life, I'm very awkward. There's a lot more pauses. I'm performing right now. This is a form of performance. Absolutely it is. It's probably a pretty honest one, but it's still a performance. I'm going to be tired after this because I'm putting on a show. And that's it. Like, it's weird for me, for the people who will message me and they talk like, hey, like, I feel like we should get a cup of coffee and I live near you. And I'm like, I'm sorry. One, don't know you. I've watched a lot of true crime, so I don't trust you. And two, you know one angle of me. That's it. And I'm sure, like, there's actually a pretty good chance if you're into my content, we might be good bros. Like, if you're into fantasy, you all have the same interests, we absolutely could be total bros or bro dad, however you want me to say it. Absolutely could be great friends. But it's still like, I don't know you though, right? And it's why it's like, it's totally awesome to come up, introduce yourself if I'm in public, but please keep in mind, I don't know you. So please introduce yourself and, you know, be in that side of it. Because I've had people come up and kind of behave like we should already be friends. And it's a little strange because it's like, I don't know your name. Please introduce yourself. I don't know. Or sometimes they'll say like, hey, I've messaged you. You've responded to my comments. I'm this username. I still don't know you, man, like, or Manette, and that's a problem. Have you ever thought of using Rally.io token system to help fund your no. Bury your crypto, also high love your content. I've not, because that kind of new stuff I'm very hesitant to get into because it's just, I want every system I get my audience involved with to be proven before I get in there, and it needs a few years to be proven. I recently joined your convention. You mentioned me to read Wheel of Time. By the way, are you into cyberpunk? I have been. I've read a few cyberpunk works on the channel now and reviewed a few cyberpunk genres. It's definitely one of the coolest aesthetics out there. And I like the theming around almost a religious approach to technology quite a bit. And I'm really looking forward to Tim's upcoming video on it that he's been working on for ages. Heart of the Jedi was unreleased Star Wars book that got released by fans on Amazon. And the way it got released, the price was purely for printing. Interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that and see if I want to cover that here on the channel. That's neat. Just finished Memory of Light, only starting Wheel of Time because of your high praise. My God, what a fantastic series. The post-series depression. Isn't it real, man? And trust me, it's so rereadable. Curious. Oh, sorry. Did I skip something on accident? No. I'm curious to know if you plan on reading any lit RPG book in the future. I do want to try it again, though I've already tried it twice before and wasn't a huge fan. Popular books in the genre. I've heard I need to give some of the more quality ones a look, so I will. Introducing Patreon tier friend. No. Any advice for writers on editing manuscripts? Get a really, really good editor. I mean, that's honestly all I can tell you is be willing to pony up the money because a quality editor is something that'll make or break your work. Hey, I wanted to post a comment. You and Murph had great chemistry. Was that too far? No. Saying we have great chemistry is fine. People often say Murph and I have like great sibling energy. I don't care about that. That's great. But like, I'm really good friends with Murph's husband. So it's a bit odd when people ship us or ship me and man carrying thing or ship like me and any other content creator. Cause it's like, no, not into them in that way at all. Y'all don't know my type. Y'all don't know what I like. Anyway, got to go write a dumb paper. Just want to say I ship you with joy. Also been reading Real Time on Shadow Rising. I love Matt and Egwene. Yeah, they're both awesome. Says he's not fictional. Also says, yeah, goblins. Goblins confirmed real. Yeah, goblins are real, obviously. I look in the mirror every morning. I see a goblin. But yeah, here's the thing. If two content creators are interacting and they are not saying, hey, we're dating, just assume they're friends and treat them as such. Hi, Daniel. Curious as a fellow Eagle Scout, how much of your previous experience with the BSA has helped your success in becoming a YouTuber? Not at all. I definitely learned some useful things in the Boy Scouts of America, and I don't hate them entirely as an organization, but their politics are something I completely disavow and I have a big issue with. Boy Scouts of America is an organization that does a lot of good, but it needs a lot of reforming. I don't know if I'd ever have my kids join the BSA. I'm glad I did it, but it also, actually, it was a great learning opportunity for me growing up, getting into the BSA, learning some really good skills, but also it made me realize sometimes you need to distance yourself from something that's a large part of your childhood. And they're doing a lot of the right now. I just need to keep checking up to seeing if they're doing enough right. I was going to spend another super chat, but I'm very sorry. I was just going to quick word on Patreon that shipped you a bit drunk. Dude, it's totally fine. It's totally okay. I'm not mad at anyone. I'm really not. I promise I'm not mad. All I'm saying is that like, it's a little weird. It's a little weird. Shipping Pips and Momo with no shame. Oh, that's Tim's cat. You can ship cats. That's fine. I don't know. How long has Tim had Momo now? I don't know. If you were to choose a very good and well-written fanfic light novel of your Sword of Truth books, wait, if you, I don't know, probably fanfic light novel. I'm not entirely sure what that meant though. Let's see. How many proofread or self-edit drafts did you do for Breach of Peace before you looked into developmental editing? I edited it twice myself. Then I had friends edit it, and then I sent it off to a professional. So it was that many. Have you started Hunter x Hunter? No, I have not, but that is on there. I have a lot of great books I've always planned to read, but never gotten around to since I'm what I call a period reader. Sounds better in Swedish, but well, how do you get the flow going? Honestly, shorter books. Having a quick, short book, to me, is like a little bump to get me going. That's actually why I burned through Murderbot so quick. It was something that after I read a big book, it was a great little transition to keep me going because you get that like quick satisfaction of I finished a book, let's continue on. Like it really does help. So I'd check out some novellas. Highly recommend Murderbot. I'm about to do One Word Kill, which I'm looking forward to and I think is a lot of fun. Excuse me. So I would just look for shorter books because it kind of just helps that flow of like training your brain. Like, hey, you finished another one. Isn't that good? Maybe grab a bigger one. Like, I think that's actually a really good way to go. So yeah. Let's see, a little bump. Okay, that was phrasing I should have worked on, especially after my little my recent skit. Some people said I was too good at that. I have no experience in that area. Do you play it? I have no experience in that area. Do you play any video games, Daniel? I'm still replaying Cyberpunk, which is weird because I don't like it still. Like I keep going back to that game, playing it, having an okay time, but being fascinated by the mistakes and areas it can improve and seeing the gaps where it still needs fixing. Does that make sense? Hey, Daniel, I'm on book 12 Wheel of Time and loving it. By the way, you mispronounced my name in the last video. Thanks for all the I'm so sorry, man. I try my best. And for your name specifically, I did the Google pronunciation thing, which I try to do for a lot of names I'm not sure about. and I think I did it off that, and I know that's not awesome. If you just message me on Patreon and tell me the proper pronunciation, I will do it again right. Hey Daniel, welcome to the B Club. I'm glad to be here. Let's see, getting into Wheel of Time, and why is it when Matt Perry and Rand are acting women, they're like, only the other two are here? Because that's what Robert Jordan's humor is, and you can love it or hate it. And that's what you got to have. Do you read books page a day or chapter a day, or do you read? I basically read till my eye hurts. I have no. Here's actually a fun thing. I got no reading goals, because I think reading goals are like workout goals. They can make you push yourself too far on certain days where maybe you need a break, and they can hold you back in days where maybe you can go further. So I read by feeling. And I also change up the format in which I read a lot. So that helps keep me going. But I think you should not have specific reading goals. I think you need to realize today I'm feeling 100 pages, today I'm feeling 20. And just go with that. You'll actually find yourself reading more overall, because you won't be continually burning yourself out to the point where you enter a reading slump. And I think that's kind of important. So I'm feeling tired now, so I'm gonna lean back. That's a good question. That was a very good question. Thank you so much for all the super chats, guys. God, you're going crazy here. Thank you. Reading Asimov right now, recommend for next sci-fi. God, if you haven't read The Expanse is absolutely must read. But maybe the most thought-provoking sci-fi book I've read in a while was Neuromancer. I'm still mulling over a lot that I went through there. Bobverse, if you're in for something a little bit more lighthearted, I have been touting that series for ages now. If you're in the more epic, hey, it's not my personal taste, but I got a lot of love and respect for Dune. I would just stick away from sci-fi that doesn't make you think as much. Sci-fi that's a bit more bland. I still am a bit upset by The City in the Middle of the Night. That was sci-fi that I think just really missed the mark. Sorry for the author out there. And it's funny. Lindsay Ellis did a pretty good first book that I actually respect with Axiom's End. I just have a hard time recommending it because it just didn't do a ton for me on the thought-provoking department, but it was a good first book. It was a good first book, so I'm a little conflicted recommending that one. Have you read the Thomas Covenant series? No, I've not. I don't think I have. God, I'm so blanking on names. Have you read Bloodsong? But no, I've not. Seems to remember you said it was on your TBR a long time ago. If not, I'm surprised. Is it shown up a lot of top fans? I have not, but that is on my TBR. You got to understand, with something on my TBR, so are 800 other books. Hi, Daniel, huge fan. Have you checked out Storygraph? No. It's a pretty good Goodreads alternatives. Oh, yeah, I have checked that out. I think I recommended it on Twitter because I did give it a little look for a while, and it looked pretty good. But I have not been able to do deep dives on Goodreads alternatives yet. Finally convinced my wife to read Wheel of Time. She loves Moraine as a kid's name. It's a really good name. I just wish you could shorten it better than more. She just got out of the Two Rivers and is enjoying it. Love the work. It's such a good series. It's such a good start to a series. Fine, I'll stop shipping you and Murph. Can I ship you and Corey? Congrats on coming out and the book success. Oh, I appreciate it. Just don't ship real people. That's my thing. Let's see. I accidentally just jumped ahead. Let's see here. How far will your next One Piece review cover? I'm going arc by arc, so it'll just be the next arc, and I'm done. So the review's coming next week. I'm done with the next arc. I mean, what happened to Let's Debate? I might come back. It just started performing worse, and a lot of the same opinions kept coming up again and again. So I was just a little less inspired to keep running with it. Though it's a lot of fun. Red Rising. Oh, how did I not say Red Rising? What a great sci-fi recommendation. I can't list everything though. Wheel of Time, technically sci-fi. So just putting that out there. Wheel of Time is absolutely, if you know the lore, technically science fiction. When/if will you read The Wandering Inn? It's not high on my TBR, if I'm being honest with you, my man. Do you consider review nonfiction, especially about BLM? It's just not the channel. It's something I'm definitely reading in my own personal time, but it's just, I got to feed the YouTube algorithm. And if I started reviewing nonfiction, which I've actually tried before, I will get buried. So I'd love to, but for my own financial future, I'm just not incentivized to do that, which sucks. And I know people are going to say like, you should anyway, but this is my career. I have to protect it. So if you want recommendations like from me outside of this, just go to my other social medias where I'll occasionally speak on things like that. Skur dada deet da boot doot doop doop, whatever that said, sure. Plug for a memory called Empire, really good new sci-fi. I heard that. I want to read that. I got some really positive reviews, didn't that? At least I'm thinking it did. Or am I thinking of the Michael J. Sullivan? Oh, that is Michael J. Right? Yes. Have you watched Loved It? Yes, I've reviewed it here on the channel. I love Death Robots. Great sci-fi content, and season 2 is this week. I know, I can't wait. I'm gonna review it so fast. I'm going to get you a Love, Death Robots review. Oh god, it just jumped ahead. There we go. I wish I knew how to talk to insert love interest. If only I was like Daniel. He always knew what to do. Trust me, I do not. I am an awkward tuna. How you doing, mate? I've started my antidepressants. Good for you, Ryan. First week has been rough and hit my uni work, but starting to feel better. My current meds I'm on right now, I had a similar thing where I was sleepy all the time, and I still am a bit, but my anxiety is way lower. So, and it's also about finding the right med. So be honest about your doc, what you're feeling, and he might prescribe you something else. I'm not going to give you any medical advice aside from be very open and honest with your doc and make sure that your doc is someone you trust. But yeah, great for you. I'm proud of you. That's good to do. Since I joined the Marine Corps a year ago, I pretty much stopped reading entirely, despite it all did before. Discovering your channel has rekindled my love for the fantasy genre. Thank you. Oh, that's great. I've actually had a couple people who are in the service tell me that there is actually a strong reading community. And I think that's so awesome. I had no idea, but a couple people have told me that books get passed around, especially when you're deployed. So that's really cool if that's true. And I hope fantasy is a part of that. Hey, Daniel, your enthusiasm makes me I enjoyed Wheel of Time more. Good. Read Thomas Covenant or the entire Internal Companion. I think Thomas Covenant's pretty high on there. I'm not sure. Hi, Daniel. Will you ever watch and review My Hero Academia? That is on my anime watch list. After One Punch Man and one other, Your Name, and I want to rewatch the original Ghost in the Shell. But it's on there. Also, how come Assassin's Creed never makes it into fantasy news? Because Assassin's Creed confuses the hell out of me. Because I read so many things from the creators a while ago that were like, oh man, this is trying to be as historically accurate as possible. But now I see things now where it's like, oh, ghost attack, go. Rah! So is it fantasy now? Should I be covering this? I'm just confused. It's not a franchise I've kept up with. Have you ever read any nonfiction? If yes, have you read Vampire Economy by Gunter Ryman? It's a book about business under fascism. And after reading Breach of Peace, I wanted to ask because it seemed relevant. No, I've not even heard of it, I don't think. Interesting. I always love when people say they hear my stuff reminding other stuff. That makes me feel good. I don't know why. Have you seen Mercer's review of Posthumous Memoirs of Brass Cubit? No, I don't. I think you'd love it as much as she did. If not, even if it's not fantasy. I've not seen her review. I actually don't watch all my friends' videos. Sorry, everyone, even like Tim and Amanda the Jedi and Murph. I don't watch everything. I'm sorry. Best sci-fi TV show. I'll start Babylon 5. If you've not watched it, it's really good. 110. I've heard of Babylon 5. I haven't seen it though. 92 of them written by one person. The creator. Okay, I love when I hear it's written by one person, one creative vision. Maybe a weird question. Do Samuel have pure black eyes or just the iris? I want to redraw the character again. I was the fan. Oh, that's awesome. Samuel has pure black eyes. So the whole pupil is black. That's a genetic trait in this world. And it's just a fun genetic trait I wanted to put in my series, where there actually are people apparently in the real world who through genetic stuff have black eyes. But it's something that's more common in the world I'm writing because I just think it's cool. I just think having pure black eyes is pretty fucking cool. And there's no justification. There is multiple elements in my fantasy world I've included just because I'm like, that's cool. And by the way, it is absolutely canon that everyone in my fantasy world has a great butt. That is canon, and you can take it home. That is important to me. What is the quickest you ever read Wheel of Time? I want to say both times I read it in 2 to 3 months. Okay, so this is true, and sorry if anyone in my old company is watching this. This is a true story. Story time. I worked at a law firm, and I was a file clerk. And they gave me work for the summer that was basically enough to last me for a week. And they said the same amount of work lasted the last person in my position like the entire summer. And I was able to do it in like a week. And I was like, what the heck? I think the person who did it for me just didn't actually work. So I finished it really quick. And I just started listening to the Wheel of Time. And then they made me do other stuff like organizing storage rooms and just like putting stickers on files that needed new labeling stickers. But I was able to have headphones in for 8 hours a day the entire summer. And I read the entire Wheel of Time, I think, I listened to the entire Wheel of Time, I think in 8 to 9 to 10 hours because of commute and also just listening while I'm cooking dinner and stuff every day during the week. And because of that, I finished it probably as fast as you pretty much humanly possibly can without just making it your entire life. It was a lot, and it was kind of fun to do it that way. I caught a lot more stuff that time because of how quickly I went through it. After chapter 95 of One Piece, there will be 4 very short arcs. Okay. So you might want to do a video covering 4 arcs then. Oh, thank you for that. I will keep that in mind. I really appreciate that. Random question. Boy Meets World. Did you watch it or were you too young? I watched Boy Meets World. I think I watched it only in syndication. I didn't watch it as it came out, though. But I'm 26, so I don't remember. I know I was very young when I watched it. It was good, though. Topanga, one of my first crushes. Have you seen Doctor Who? I watched up to Matt Smith, and I stopped. I just started watching it and have really enjoying it so far. I've not watched after Matt Smith because I just stopped enjoying it. What are your thoughts on Anne McCaffrey? Also, are you going to do part 2 of what are your favorite authors says about you? I am. And Anne McCaffrey, I don't have strong opinions on. Sorry. But I'm definitely going to do that because a lot of people want to know, what about Erickson? What about XYZ? So yeah, I'll do that. Daniel, thank you for introducing Wheel of Time. Read the entire thing last year, April, August, September. That's awesome. Started again April and on book 4. Love you. Oh, thank you. That's amazing. Also, great reading speed there. Wow, that's impressive. Every time I say that, people are like, well, I read it in 2 months. Okay, that's impressive for you, but that's not, people are doing this at crazy speeds for them, and that's what's important. What's your favorite type of video to film, and why is it making skits/memes? Absolutely the skits. I have so much fun with those. And I know a skit's going to be good if it makes me laugh once while I'm editing it, but I hate myself in videos. So like I very often do not laugh at skits. And before I put them out, I'm hoping people don't just cringe the whole time. But like my latest one with Game of Thrones, I actually got myself to laugh out loud while editing it twice, which sounds super nerdy. But that's how I knew it was going to be pretty good. A lot of people said it was my favorite of theirs, so I appreciate that. Just want to say you're awesome. You're awesome too. How to Train Your Gavin. That's a great name. I hope that's a Lightbringer reference. It will warm your Wheel of Time heart to know that I have seen Eye of the World being passed around on deployment in Afghanistan. That's amazing. I love hearing that. I also heard, at least from one of my friends, that Dune was passed around in his group a lot, which I think is pretty cool, as well as Lord of the Rings, which I assume that's just being passed around in every circle everywhere. Have you read? No, I've not read Saga, but that's actually, I've mentioned recently that I want that to be, I think, my next graphic novel attempt, because graphic novels I've struggled with. Please watch Psycho Pass anime. I've not even, have I heard? No, someone recommended that before. 10 and 10 recommend your name. That's a movie, right? And that is high on my to be watched because it's on a streaming service. Yay. Rule of Cool, still cool or passe? Rule of Cool works depending on the genre and the intent. If you're interested in more sci-fi anime after Akira, then Legend of the Galactic Heroes might tickle your fancy. Just 110 20-minute episodes of a 90s show. Okay, that's cool. Oh, okay. I have more thoughts on Rule of Cool. And there's a fantastic example of when it applies and when it doesn't. So even in most modern sci-fi, I'm cool with Rule of Cool. Because it's just like, yes, you can have scientific ideas, but if you want to have a lightsaber type thing, even though that doesn't make entire sense, go ham. Go for it. But if you've been rooted in hardcore science and you suddenly do something that is Rule of Cool, it's not going to be cool. It's going to be lame because it comes across as not nice. And a phenomenal example of this you can just look directly at is in The Martian, because The Martian in the book didn't do the Rule of Cool. And in the ending scene, which I won't spoil, they joke about a Rule of Cool thing, but don't execute it. In the movie, they actually execute it. And everyone universally I've talked to hated that because the Martian book is super rooted in actual science. And the movie is pretty much as well. But then they take this creative liberty and just go, blah, and it totally breaks. And it's like kind of a cool thing that if it was like a Marvel movie, you'd be like, haha, cool. But because it's in the Martian, it just comes across horribly. So it's really off-putting. So that's an important Rule of Cool note. It has to still fit your overall intent and tone so far. So that's one of the important notes. Love the audiobook for Breach of Peace. Thank you. Kate sounded perfect for Hlid. How did you come up with the name of Hlid? It's actually an inside joke with Murphy and I based off of a D&D thing. And I don't know if I can say it and not ruin my own book. Because it's a very dumb, immature inside joke that I never meant to actually affect the tone of my book, but it's a dumb, immature joke. So maybe we'll actually talk about that one day. Have you checked out the game Greedfall? It's Manifest Destiny fantasy. Well, no, I've not. With Conlang, I've not. That actually sounds right up my alley and something I need to read before I write my main series. What did you think of the difference between Jordan versus Sanderson as far as Wheel of Time book? Does Sanderson do a good job mimicking Jordan? He does an absolutely awesome job mimicking Jordan. There's, of course, issues you can find and like slight things where it's like Sanderson definitely handled this differently. But overall, he did way better than anyone had any right to think an author could coming in. And that's because he's such a student of Jordan. Anyone who expected anything more than he did, your bar was too high. It's almost, it is impossible to come in and write exactly like someone else. You just can't do that. Topanga Crush Club. We're working on the hats. I feel like everyone I know as a kid had a crush on Topanga, Kim Possible, Raven from Teen Titans. Those were the three, like everyone I knew had a crush on those three. Hey, Danny boy, when are you going to stop making bad decisions and finally read Books of Babel? I'm sorry, I just haven't gotten around to it. I appreciate the reminder though. Let's see. Are you planning to read Book of the New Sun? I'm very curious. I am. That's actually higher on my TBR than not. Who was that? Was that Orbit? I think that was Orbit. Oh my God, so many super chats. I'm trying to get to them. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. What did you listen to while moving? While moving, I was listening to, what did I just, wait, my dad just sent me a text. Oh, he sent me a text of his chat to make sure I saw it. Dad, I'm paying attention. It was the book I just put out a review for. It was Unsold. I was listening to Unsold and Xenos, I believe. Or did I already finish Xenos? I'm not sure. Why'd you quit software engineering? Because I started making enough money on YouTube. Ever read something from Andres? No, I don't believe either of those authors. Second, Legend of the Galactic Heroes. It takes questions about humanity as a whole and societies we make and still has been thinking about it years later. Okay. Is that an anime? I think that's an anime. I'm not sure. Have you watched Killjoys? No. Show on sci-fi that has heavy cyberpunk vibes, so less punk and a little more outer space. I like outer space cyberpunk. That's actually something that bothers me about cyberpunk. I love cyberpunk. Put more cyberpunk actually in space, please. Have you or do you have any plans to finish John Gwynne? Yes, I do. That, especially after reading Shadow of the Gods. Oh yeah, I want to go through his books because Shadow of the Gods is freaking great. I've seen a couple more negative reviews than mine, and those people have absolutely respectable opinions and grievances, and they don't like something quite as action focused or whatever. But I was in the mood for a meaty action heavy fantasy epic, so it just it vibed with me so well. What do you think of the Wheel of Time show rumor that Elaine will not appear until season 2? I haven't heard that rumor. If it's true, I guess that could make sense. I mean, her appearance in book 1 is really just to kind of set her up as a character for execution later, and you don't get a real thorough introduction until book 2. So I could see that. I can't verify it's true or not, obviously, but I could see why, especially if you have to streamline book 1 so much. I wonder why they'd even go to Camelin then. I don't know. That's interesting. Recommend Commonwealth Saga by Peter F. Hamilton for epic fantasy fans writing to try sci-fi. Multiple storylines with tech impacting human society. That's the kind of sci-fi I'm looking for right now. So that's a good way to go. I liked Kim. I'm a sucker for a girl in a crop top. Every person who's into women is a sucker for crop tops, I feel like. Have you read Y the Last Man? I've started and put it down a couple times, but I definitely have positive memories and what I remember. Hey, I'm almost caught up. Finished Mistborn last month and loved it, but the prose felt very repetitive by the end to me. Yeah, it wasn't his prose have improved since then. Is Strolling the same or does he get better? Way of Kings is not Sanderson's best prose, but as the series has gone on, his prose have improved. So prose for Sanderson getting better, but he's not the Abercrombie style. He's not someone who will ever blow you away. That's not true. Sanderson has specific passages where he does excellent work, but he's spoken on the fact that he intentionally goes simple because he wants to have a really mass appeal. So, and that's why he's successfully marketed to YA too. So Sanderson, I would say don't ever expect Martin, Rothfuss, Abercrombie, Tad Williams. Don't expect that, because he's not. That's not his intent. His intent, and he does have moments where he writes very beautifully, but his intent is simple and digestible. He wants you to be able to binge his books very, very well. So I think he's executing that very extremely well. You got me into a lot of time. Now I can't stop reading fantasy. Good. We have another one, boys. Another one's in the Goblin Clan. How complete is that Sherlock other edition, Rex? I can't speak on the other editions. This was a gift from Murphy and Appear, and it's got, I think, everything. No, it does not. I actually haven't looked at this close enough. It does not have everything, but it's got a lot of it. It's got everything up till his last bow, which I believe... No, that is the last. Yeah, that's all of Sherlock, right? God, it's been so long since I read it all. I don't know. I think it's pretty complete, though, but I can't tell you where to get this edition because it was a gift. Sorry about that. Recommend Parasite by the Maximum Anime. Only 24 episodes and does deep exploration of themes surrounding humanity and our place in nature and whatnot. Ooh, I love that. Guys, if you keep piling on the anime recommendations, I won't know what to get to. Just saying. What book generally had a lasting impact on you this year? In the last 365 days, the book I've probably thought about the most is Neuromancer. I really loved the thematic explorations there, and that's really made me think about our place in the wider, almost spiritual landscape of technology that is absolutely arising in modern day. In terms of emotional impact, the second two books of Red Rising definitely have made me like just have moments where I think back and just yeah, or so there's definitely been strong emotional impacts there. And yeah, those are probably the top tier. Oh God, I reread Small Gods, and talk about making me think. Every time I read a Terry Pratchett, I'm thinking about it for ages. And I reread Mort and had the same thought. Hey, it's Kay. If you could turn one fantasy novel or series into a musical, which series would you choose? Into a musical? Murderbot. I would love Murderbot the nihilistic musical. That would be amazing, and I would be so down. I want a Hamilton style, no, Sondheim style Murderbot musical. Yes, that is what I want. I want Sondheim Murderbot musical. And Dad, if you're still here, you're probably extremely happy with that pick. I'm just about to start publishing my urban fantasy. What's the best advice you can give for self-pub? So acknowledging my own privilege as a creator, I cannot really speak on marketing, but I have been told by several people who are getting into self-publishing that my video where I went through step by step is extremely helpful for them. So just on their recommendations, I know it sounds self-plugging, but that video apparently is good. And then for the marketing, my interview with Evan Winter, where he talks about his success in self-pub, I found amazingly useful. Him speaking on his success and his experience with Amazon and analytics and return on investment, which is all a business side of self-publishing you need to know. Evan Winter might be the best resource out there because he murdered it when it came to self-publishing. He did such an outstanding job, and his advice, invaluable. So I would recommend those two videos. And I know that sounds self-publishing, but I made self-plugging, but I made those videos for a reason, and that's to help people with this exact question. Graceful, thank you. Legend of the Galactic Heroes is anime adaptation of famous Japanese sci-fi books. Oh, interesting. What you said you like about old Star Trek sounds similar to it. That, ooh, you know me. You know how to appeal to me, don't you? Oh, don't you? Oh, don't you? What themes generally hook you with books, TV, movies, etc.? And what are you tired of seeing? I'm tired of seeing themes that are anti-popular thing, that are not well done. So an example of well done anti-popular thing is how Game of Thrones is anti-fantasy. A Song of Ice and Fire is good anti-fantasy up to what we've got so far with the recent books. But then there's a lot of stuff that just tries to be like edgy, anti-mainstream popular thing. And they don't do it very well because they don't have much to say outside of here's here's my criticism of this. Fortunately, I've actually had enough good examples of anti-popular thing that I can kind of like enjoy still this anti-popular thing mentality. The Boys, Invincible, very good, kind of going against the grain for staples, but stuff that just claims, like a lot of the A Song of Ice and Fire knockoffs fall into this, because A Song of Ice and Fire is anti-fantasy for a reason. A lot of the stuff that's trying to walk just being A Song of Ice and Fire is anti-fantasy for just being anti-fantasy, and it doesn't do a whole lot for me. A very good example of this, in my opinion, would be, I know he's passed, so it's not be great to poo on his work, but Good Kind wrote from a perspective of, I'm better than fantasy, so my books are edgy and dark and go against what you expect because they're not your typical fantasy. And it all it does is, like, so a lot of people don't want to admit this, tropes of a genre exist because they often service that genre very well. And so if you just needlessly are going against them because you think you're better than them, you're taking away staples that often do help this material because of commonly found things with this material. And so it can end up hurting you a lot. But themes, I don't like to say there's any one theme I generally like outside of taking a specific idea and diving deep into it. I don't like a lot of ideas kind of touched on, which is why a lot of Marvel movies only stay in the I really like them, I don't love them range, because Marvel is very guilty of just, here's a lot of ideas and we touch on them, but we don't really dive deep. Falcon and the Winter Soldier is actually an example of Marvel going, no, we're going to dive deep into a one specific idea that they really explored, and I liked that. But like they've had now a pattern of issue with WandaVision and Falcon Winter Soldier, they didn't really bring those themes into the conclusion very smoothly. But for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I'm actually going to excuse it because they apparently had to cut out an entire plot line with a pandemic happening. And I don't know how much that affected their ending, which I can't imagine how difficult it is to pull out a plot line. So I'm very soft with my criticism for them there. If you enjoy a sci-fi Western anime that's hilarious, Trigun I've actually looked into, but I haven't picked up because I really don't like Westerns. From the typical Western to the aesthetic to a lot of the themes that come with Westerns in general, just not my thing. And I find them to be just a not as enjoyable version of what we get from Japan, which is not Shogun genre. What am I thinking of? Or is it Shogun? I don't know. But whatever Westerns are clearly inspired from Japan, I often just like those versions because a lot of Westerns are just retellings. There's actually this really interesting cyclical nature where Japan retells Westerns as Westerns retell Japanese stuff. And it's this cyclical thing where they've done this for a while. And then sci-fi got involved, and now like sci-fi dabbles in this, like Star Wars came in. And so now we have these genres that feed off each other in an interesting way. And because the genre is evolving the way genre does, they've now all blended into like one thing. And that's why you're seeing like The Mandalorian, which is inspired by all the Japanese, the Western, and sci-fi. So that's like the weird pinnacle of that feeding cyclical relationship, which is a really interesting history to get into. How, like, you know, Seven Samurai inspired this Western, which inspired this sci-fi movie, which inspired this Japanese samurai movie, which inspired this Western, and they've just fed off each other for decades. It's really neat. I really like that. But yeah, that's my kind of opinions there. I'm not a big fan of Westerns. Is the weakest of that triumvirate in my Ronin. Thank you, Ronin. Ronin is what I was thinking of. I appreciate the correction. I can't believe I said shonen. Was that? Well, we have Let's Debate Again. Covered this earlier. It just started getting a bit repetitive, but I'll probably come back with a souped up version in the future. Shonen or Ronin? Now people are saying shonen and Ronin. I don't know which one. Hey, Daniel, tried Night Watch and didn't like it. Tried Small Gods and didn't like it. I don't give up on Patrick yet. I want to give one more shot. If you didn't like Night Watch, you didn't like Small Gods, I'd go Mort. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You don't have to like anything. Even, you know, great works can just not be your cup of tea. But Mort is one that I love, and I think a lot of people enjoy. So I would go Mort. One book trilogy I love would be The Summoner it's basically Harry Potter meets Pokemon. That's a neat enough combo for me to want to try it out just on that alone. Interesting. Let's see. Have you read James Cavill Asia books on Shogun? No, I have not. Will you ever examine the lore of Magic the Gathering? Probably not, just because also Trigon's pretty good. I'm good. Okay. Probably not, just because it's those are two franchises that have just never interested me. Last time I got into Warcraft heavily was Warcraft 3, Reign of Chaos, and Frozen Throne. Loved those games growing up, liked the lore around them a lot, but I feel like it's grown so much from there that if that's the last thing I've gotten into, I would have no idea where to go now. So yeah. What are the some elements most first-time fantasy authors consistently get wrong as far as storytelling? A trend I've noticed with the self-published books I've gotten into is they spend a lot of time on character and they do a very basic story. Now, I don't want to say that's wrong. It's very okay to do that because, you know, it's difficult to tackle a big, hefty story. So I get why you might just, you know, tell a big story and move on, and that's fine. But for me, I would like to see a bit more of a balance because a lot of the self-pub books I get into from first-time authors, Unsold, I think had this problem. Really neat characters and a very fascinating world, which actually consistently just as much as character, but the story was extremely basic. To the point where it kind of just became predictable and I didn't love it as much. I've heard the series improves in there, though, so I'm excited for that. Have you read A Pattern of Shadow and Light? No, I have not. Let's see. Ronin equals samurai who lost his mentor. Shonen equals demographic at teen and young. Thank you. Full Metal Alchemist, Naruto example of that too. Okay, perfect. Okay, so yes, Ronin was what I meant. I appreciate that. The Ronin feeds into Western, which feeds into Ronin, which feeds into Western, which feeds into sci-fi, which feeds in, and then they all kind of blended over time. It's really neat. But yeah, there's the evolution of genre is like an area of academia that I think is really fascinating, especially with how marketization has just ruined the purpose genre used to serve, in my opinion. Hey, Tony, thank you so much. But my throat is going and I'm really tired and I have plans with friends tonight. So I need to start getting ready for that, guys. I just wanted to rant about true crime and I had other rants in me, but we got sidetracked here. Thank you so much for showing up and supporting and loving. If you want to see my thoughts on true crime and my general frustration, feel free to go back and watch this video because it annoys the heck out of me so freaking much. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Love, love, love y'all. And I will talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your weekend.